Welcome. Today, we're going to build an enterprise-grade framework for AWS identity logging. And look, this isn't just some best practice. It's a foundational part of your security posture, and it's absolutely essential if you want to pass any major audit, whether it's SOC 2, ISO, or anything in finance.
Okay, let's just start with a critical question. If a security breach happened right now, in your environment, could you confidently trace it? I mean, from the very first login, through every single action taken, all the way to the final impact on your resources. Answering yes to this is, frankly, non-negotiable, and it's exactly the blind spot we are going to eliminate today.
So, here's how we're going to build this out, piece by piece. First, we'll lay down the foundation with CloudTrail. Then, we'll add that crucial context with AWS Config. After that, we'll get into the advanced tools you need for a real investigation. And finally, we'll put it all together into one cohesive, enterprise-ready framework.
All right, so we begin with the absolute bedrock of our entire framework, AWS CloudTrail. You'll hear this called the golden log of identity, and for good reason. It is the foundational record of every single thing that happens in your AWS accounts. Think of CloudTrail like this. It's the security camera footage for your whole environment. It's a service that meticulously records every API call, capturing the essential who, what, when, and where for every action. This gives you that raw, undeniable event history that you absolutely need for any investigation. And the sheer breadth of what CloudTrail logs is really impressive. It's not just about successful user actions and IP addresses. It captures calls from the console, the CLI, any SDK. But here's the key insight for any security analyst. It also logs failed logins and access denied errors. Honestly, those failed attempts are often way more valuable than the successful ones. They can be the earliest warning signs that a breach is in progress.
Now, for a proper enterprise setup, just turning on CloudTrail is not enough. These right here are the non-negotiable best practices. First, you have to enable an organization trail. This enforces logging across every single account, no exceptions. Second, store those logs in a secure, encrypted S3 bucket. Third, you've got to turn on log file validation to ensure their integrity. For compliance, you need to retain them for at least 7 years. And finally, integrate everything with Security Hub to get all your findings in one place. Okay, let's move to our next component and see how it builds on top of CloudTrail. We're talking about AWS Config now. So if CloudTrail answers who did what, then Config answers an equally important question. Okay, but what was the result of that action?
And this comparison just highlights the core difference perfectly. CloudTrail logs the API call. It tells you who called the delete security group API. AWS Config, on the other hand, gives you the resource state audit. It shows you exactly what that security group's configuration looked like before and after that call was made. This distinction is absolutely critical for understanding the real impact of any change.
So what Config really does is create this complete historical timeline for every critical resource you tell it to watch, from security group rules and IAM policies all the way to network components like route tables. And here's the crucial link. It ties every single one of those configuration changes back to the specific CloudTrail event that kicked it off.
But it goes beyond just tracking history. Config is also your governance engine. You can use config rules to constantly check if your resources are compliant with your policies, like, for example, making sure no S3 buckets are public. It can even trigger automated remediation to fix those misconfigurations on the spot. Pretty powerful stuff.
So we have our foundational API logs, and we have our resource change history. Now let's look at the specialized tools we use to turn all of that raw data into something you can actually use, especially when you're doing a forensic analysis. For any security operations team, CloudTrail Lake is an absolutely essential tool. It basically transforms your huge archive of CloudTrail logs from just a bunch of files into a fully queryable database. It becomes your digital forensics lab, letting you run complex SQL queries directly against your entire event history.
So think about it. Instead of the painful, multi-hour process of downloading and manually searching through gigabytes of log files, your team can just run a simple SQL query like this one. What used to take hours now literally takes seconds. You can pinpoint the exact time, the username, and the source IP of a specific destructive action. This is an absolute game changer for incident response time.
And finally, we have to monitor the front door itself. Identity events don't just start inside an account, they start at login. That's where your SSO audit logs come in. The best way to think about these logs from AWS IAM Identity Center is like the entry card swipe logs for your entire building. They tell you who tried to get in and what access they were ultimately given.
So to have that complete picture, you absolutely must be monitoring these specific events. You need to watch all sign-in attempts, both successful and failed. You have to audit every single time a permission set is assigned or changed. And you need to track any access denied events during role switching. This gives you that full end-to-end view of who's getting in and what permissions they have across the whole organization. Okay, let's put it all together. We're going to walk through the global architecture now and see how these components work together to create that complete, audit-proof system, the one that finally gives us that zero blind spot view of identity. Let's trace the flow. It all begins right here with our foundation, CloudTrail. It acts as the universal collector, capturing every single API call and identity event from every service in every account across the entire organization.
That massive stream of raw data then feeds directly into CloudTrail Lake. This is where all that raw footage gets organized. It provides the forensic tools for your security teams to run those deep investigative queries using standard SQL. Now, working in parallel, AWS Config is watching for the results of those API calls. It's continuously recording the state changes of your resources, and it links everything back to CloudTrail to give you that essential before and after picture for every single action.
And finally, tying this all together, right at the user's point of entry are the IAM Identity Center audit logs. These secure the perimeter. They're auditing every login attempt and every permission assignment before an action can even be taken inside an account. So, the end result is this comprehensive framework that lets you answer every critical question an auditor is going to throw at you. Who logged in? You check the SSO logs. What actions did they perform? That's in CloudTrail. What resources were actually changed? AWS Config has that record. And how do I investigate? You use CloudTrail Lake. You now have a clear, unbroken, and totally defensible chain of evidence from login all the way to impact.
And this brings us to the final thought for your own environment. Is your logging framework just a compliance checkbox, something that's collecting digital dust in an S3 bucket? Or is it an active, queryable system that's actually designed to provide clear, actionable answers when you need them the most?